not me turning off the cat's water fountain so that I had a nice, clean background environment with no hum in the background to record in for my nice sensitive microphone. Completely forgetting that I live next to a major road and I don't have soundproofing on my windows. This was doomed from the start. Hello everyone, welcome, first episode Whimsy and Metaphor Ride Along Club. Let's get into it. Like all the other episodes, this episode is recorded on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. Sovereignty was never ceded. So, once the cars have gone past, let's get straight into it. So, couple of things. I'm not going over any more intro stuff. There is an intro video. You should watch it. It's very detailed. But there's a couple of things I want to go over just because this is the first video and there's a few things I want to hammer in. So, this is a write-along club. Should you want to write along with the write-along club, please feel free. This is why we're here. I'll be doing some Twitch streams and things so that we can do some actual sprints together and you can ask direct questions and things. But for now, there's just some YouTube stuff. Pop questions in the comments. I'll record the next couple of videos sort of at a stretch. So if I don't answer videos in the comments questions on this video in the next video, it's because I didn't see them, because that's not how time works. I'll try and answer them either in the comments or I'll answer them a couple of videos down the road if there's a bunch of people asking one question. The only other thing is, as I alluded to, probably going to be lots of swearing. I am a sweary individual. And I tend to write sort of, not necessarily horror, but sort of at minimum horror adjacent. So, and because I don't know what I'm about to write, I can't give you content warnings right now. That aside, let's get into what this video is going to be about. So, part of what I'm doing with this series is I'm basically modeling my process all the way through. And we're going to be deviating from that from this video, specifically because there is something that I do want to model, but it's not necessarily how I always go about things. Partially because I'm working to a brief, and I'm not usually. Partially because there is a point I want to prove. I have a chip on my shoulder about something and I'm inflicting it on everyone else. So, basically, the way that I would usually go into this sort of idea generation thing, if I'm doing something for my website, something that I'm publishing myself, is I just sort of bounce ideas around in my head until something makes me go, okay, now I need to dig. Which is, I think that's fairly common. I think that's pretty fair to say that's fairly common. But that's not necessarily easy to model because it takes months. And I have somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. So we're not going to do it that way. There's a couple of things that I will talk about just as we're starting in here before I get to the actual ideas generation section as to why I'm doing it this way. Let me talk for a second about concepts versus premises. Not in any dictionary definition, not in any official or academic or in any other way peer-reviewed definition, just in the way that I'm going to use them in this video. The difference for me between a concept and a premise is a concept is smaller, it's a feature of a story. It is some sort of interesting idea that you can use in a project. It could be an idea for a scene, could be an idea for a character, idea for a setting, an idea for a specific character dynamic, or a specific plot element, or a specific trope or theme that you want to use. I'm going to talk about themes a lot, but I'll probably talk about why I talk about themes in the next video. I think that might be a next step kind of thing. Just suffice it to say for now that I think about theme early and I think about theme at the same time as I think about everything else. It's another element with character plot setting, rather than something that I find or discover later in the process. So a concept is one of those pieces, or it's a piece of one of those pieces. It's something that makes your brain go, there's something there. But a concept is not a premise. And a premise is, you're almost getting close to your elevator pitch when you get to premise. Premise is something where you can go, oh, I can now break this idea down such that I could explain to another person what the story is about and who's in it. It's not necessarily, it's not like a full character list. It may not even necessarily be all of the main characters. But a premise is that sort of at least one primary character, an idea of what the central conflict is, and a sense of why the story is interesting, plus what I like to call a sense of the arc, which means that when you get to the premise stage, you have at least the bare bones of where you start and where you want to end up. Thematically, character, plot, any of the above. It doesn't have to be all the arcs, but at least one. You've got an idea of that sense of progression. And this is the part where we get to what I want to really like showcase here. That is learnable. And by that I mean there's no mystical, like, you can do it the organic way, which is, just let things percolate and eventually your brain will go, hey, those things fit really well. But I want to show you right here and now that with a bit of training, a bit of practice, you can absolutely get to the point where you can go from a bunch of concepts to a solid premise, and you can do it quickly, you can do it fast, and you can make something really interesting. And actually, I think you can almost make it more interesting than if you were just taking some premises, or taking one concept and fleshing it out into a premise. My process when I'm turning concepts into premises is always, it's never broaden out concept. It's always Tetris. It's always jamming a bunch of concepts together to see what they make. Because I think that it's more interesting if you get different ideas playing off each other. But that's just how, again, this is just how I do things. But I really do want to prove that you don't have to wait for the muse to strike with this. So what I'm going to do, I realize I've rambled on a lot at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out this book and let's see how badly this messes with my green screen settings. Hey, I'm in sepia. So this book, which is red, although that will be very difficult to tell, is my ideas book. It's up the wrong way because it looks the same from all directions. It's sort of one to a page, premises or almost to a premise. Premise or like one plot thread might be a way to put it. But there's also a section at the beginning where I've got a bunch of just sentence prompts that I've thought of. These are my concepts that I've got floating around that I haven't necessarily put into anything else yet. Okay, so one more thing that I want to go over. We've got our timer up. You're all going to have to just trust me that I am good enough at computers to get the tablet screen onto my PC, but not good enough to fake a timer on a pre-recorded video. For those of you that do want to do the idea generation part of this along with us, I realize that I am slightly at an advantage here because I have one of these. I have an ideas book that is full of many, many, many ideas, many concepts, many premises. There's already a bunch of stuff in there that I can use. But if you don't have one of these yet, if you do not have a handy dandy book of concepts and things to work from, I will put a couple of prompt generators in the description box. I will try and stick to ones that I've used since like 2010. Which means that they are not going to, or I'm going to try and avoid ones that have large language model AI in them. If you have generators and things that you would like to share, please, I don't use them very often, so I don't have good resources on them. Please share them in the comments. Would absolutely love to get some input on those for the people that want them. But if you would like to use the idea that I come up with in this video and go along with the rest of the Write Along Club, using that idea and fleshing it out and seeing where it goes alongside. This is my like blanket permission statement. It is in writing. I have said it on record. If you would like to use as much or as little of this idea as you would like to use for a writing exercise as part of learning along with this series, and you would like to share them, like link me and share them on social media so that we can all see like how differently it all turned out, please go ahead. I am not going to consider it any form of plagiarism if you are taking the idea that I build up here and using it as an exercise to learn how to write. This is what this idea is here for. So, that said, we've got the timer up. I will just make sure that that screen does not go to sleep on me like it did a few minutes ago. I will start the timer. I will open this up. I'm going to try and explain my thought process as I go, but knowing me and knowing my thought process, this could get very scattered very fast. So, let us see exactly how quickly we can go from these concepts and ideas that I have here to finished product. Or finished premise, shall we say. Okay. So this is open. I am at the table of contents, which I have not yet looked at, and we are pressing go now. Okay, so I'm going to skip over the table of contents to start. I'm going to go straight for this list of sentences and things. So things that I have here, I've got a couple of what are they called? Music video references. I've got the music video for I Would Do Anything for Love by Meatloaf. I've got a reference to in here. I've got a reference to some statues that I saw at a Japanese art gallery once that were like some sort of divine spirit aspects or something like that. I don't have photos of them anymore, but I do remember vaguely what they looked like, and I remember there were 6 of them, and they had something to do with spirits or elemental forces or things like that. I've got a couple of cool words. Ethnotramp is the word for a wild species spread with human help. I've got an idea here which I've found interesting in the past, which is a king or other like high-ranking member of royalty or nobility has been kidnapped, and his peers are forced to decide his ransom in front of him, where he's not allowed to say anything, but he is allowed to watch. I think that's kind of an interesting concept. What is the Night Court? I've got a reference to an old the song Bedlam Boys, which is an interesting one, ? Quote, where can I stand so that I can see the same thing you do in the same way? I feel like I'm already covering that in some of my other stories. Let's not do that. Torture by super healing is an interesting one. Isolated, trapped with a killer trope, but fantasy, not thriller, and without a murderer. I have no idea what I was thinking when I wrote that. Sorcerer raised by ghosts could be an interesting one. None of these are striking me yet. So let me turn to the end of this book for some of my more recent ideas from this. So I've got House of Third Sons, which is a historical fantasy about the. I don't know where it's going yet, but I know it's about the unwanted children of nobility who have been sent to live in the monastery, which came to me when I was learning about the assassins or the ninja temple in Japan, and a lot of the tricks of architecture used to make that easily defensible if you know where all the secret passages are, which you do and your enemies do not. So those kind of concepts floating around in my head. So something, there's some clones here. Daughter summons a dog hellhound, but it likes her brother better. That was an interesting one. Dragon sacrifice thing. I don't think there's anything I have that's I can say about that is more interesting than anything anyone else has done. A girl wants nothing more than to be queen despite knowing the monarchy is dead and gone. She finds her own body in the ruins of the castle, and a magical being tells her she was sent back to stop the monarchy dying, but caused or could not prevent the collapse. She now needs to be sent back again to fix her own mistakes. There's interesting things there. I think it would be more interesting if I pulled it away from that concept of royalty. Let's bookmark that. Story told backwards from the point of view of the trial. Interesting, but not too interesting. No. What was I? Boy and a girl meet each other on the road. She is from a culture where drink and blood are borderline worshipped. People cut themselves into their beer to start their evenings. Giant message appeared on the wall. God's language. She is driven out of town for dishonoring her parents and blasphemy. She meets the boy on the road. Interesting. This is also combining with another story that I know is another point that's in here somewhere, which I have never managed to do anything with. It's attached itself to several other stories in vague kind of spots, but I haven't gotten anything to do with it yet. So I am going to put that away because I think I have some ideas forming. I have just filled my brain with a lot of ideas that are kind of royalty, ruling class, leader based. Okay, we're going for a dark fantasy probably. I kind of want to steer away from some of the royalty tropes in fantasy, but we'll see how we go. I'm pouring this drink because I'm going to need one after talking for like 5.5 minutes without stopping. So there was a story idea that I came up with a while ago that I haven't managed to quite Tetris into anything yet, but it may be about the right length to go into something like this. So we've got the character. We have leader of some sort of group of people, and the place that they were living was very much based in my head off of the Lord of the Rings, Return of the Tower shots of Cirith Ungol. So this kind of like spectral city. So I think we've got undead in here. I definitely think we're playing with undead. We have a guerrilla / rebel leader called the Blackbird, which was stolen from, I believe, also the Blackbird. I don't recall whether it was called the Blackbird or something else, but the character from Inkheart, Cornelia Funk, which is a series I have not read for quite some time, but I keep remembering bits and pieces of every so often. But they had, I think they was like the something J or something like that. Anyway, so like bird themed folk hero rebel leader type thing. I'm thinking that we've got some form of, maybe we can do something with, instead of Blackbird, maybe we can go like the Raven Corvid Psychopomp route. But I definitely think we've got a ruler of the undead people. And I think they are, in my head, they are in some way allied with this Blackbird character. I don't know exactly how or why yet, or what the thing is that they are attempting to fight. I want to maybe bring in that idea of the king being ransomed in front of the peers. And I think that may be something that the blackbird does. But this is getting too much into the weeds. I think what we have, and keeping in mind, as I said in the intro, this needs to be about 20,000 words to 30,000 words. So I'm trying not to get too complicated. And I'm trying to like stop here, because I think at this point, if I were doing this myself, I would be starting to go, okay, who is everybody? What are they doing? But I will keep going for just a moment, because I want to end this on that like elevator pitch level type thing. But what we will have something that we now have something we can flesh out and build on. And the thing that we have that we can flesh out and build on is we have this ruler of the undead. We've got the blackbird, who is a folk hero. We have them at cross purposes, but not necessarily in conflict with each other as their primary enemy. And we have a whole bunch of assumptions that I've made about the setting for this in the background. We'll get to those in the second. Video. But the part that we can now start to flesh out and work on is that we have some sort of major political conflict going down around them, that they both have roles in and goals around. Perhaps I feel like, given that we've got so much death, we've got so much undead, I'm definitely feeling like there's this like decay of the land kind of thing going on, politically, not literally. Maybe we have a kind of swelling of power in this undead faction as a little bit of a metaphor for this, like, the feeding of the army of the dead kind of thing. I don't want to go army of the dead. I think that's wrong. But I'm going to stop that there. 9 minutes, 54 seconds. Under 10 minutes. I have taken enough pieces out of this to put together some stuff in my head. So, I am now at the point where I would consider this. I know this doesn't necessarily match the idea of an elevator pitch that you would give to someone else, which is fine. I think the important thing for me and my process is that I have gone from no idea to I've fed a bunch of elements into my head, and I've come up with something that I can work with. Something that I can start to draw concrete conclusions from. So I've now got enough to say, okay, well, if undead, what kind? If folk hero guerrilla leader, who are this person's followers? Are they related to this undead group? I can start to draw concrete associations out from that. And this is something that I can build on. And it's got that sense of that arc that I was talking about, because I feel like it's got this this hint towards that character progression of, at least it does in my head. I don't know if this came out when I was rambling, because it's very hard to ramble and decide things all at the same time, which is why I'm doing this like post-mortem now. It's really got that sense that there's these two characters at the start who are very ideologically opposed in some ways, but not in others. And by the end of the story, they have either found a middle ground, maybe, or, bad option, they have discovered that the rifts between them are too great, and they've defeated each other's plans because there were things between them that they could not reconcile. I feel like we've got this kind of arc going on. So the other thing I want to address real quick is that it feels in a lot of ways from that little spiel like I went through and discarded a lot of ideas. and then came up with the one idea, with exactly the thing that I said I wouldn't do, right? Which is to come up with a lot of ideas, discard a lot of ideas, and then sit down and flesh out the one that was already the one concept that I came up with. Flesh that out instead of sticking some things together. I want to say that, yes, that's partially the case. There are a few reasons why it's not necessarily, however. First off is because, as I said before, in some ways this was an idea that I'd already done some of that pre-Tetrising to. I'd already taken this undead idea. I'd already taken the scene of Kirith Ungol. I'd already taken this character from the Ink Heart Ink whatever series by Cornelia Funk. I'd already taken all of these and put them together into a core that I hadn't yet built a proper concept, a proper premise from. Or I'd been trying to add to other concepts to make a premise, but hadn't managed it yet. So I was already 90% there with that particular idea. The thing that is important to note, however, about that process of looking through ideas and discarding them was not necessarily that they were going to be incorporated explicitly, but what I was doing underneath the surface in a way that I couldn't necessarily explain at the time without breaking my flow was that I was taking these ideas and I was picking them up and discarding them, but I was priming my brain. And as I was picking them up, I was going, I'm interested in this idea. I can't use it specifically, but I'm going to take the vibe. I'm going to take the idea of the idea. And I'm going to go, okay, I'm starting to think down this kind of similar tone tracks. So essentially what I've done, and maybe I will need to split this out into two, but essentially what I've done there is I have compressed the process of several months, right, into like 9 minutes, 54 seconds of absorbing a bunch of things and spitting out a bunch of reinterpretations and reimaginings. Because usually, right, as a creator, what you do, how you get these ideas in that sort of mystical sense is not necessarily, I think the best way to describe it we've come across is to say that people take these ideas that they come across. They've seen something at a museum, they've watched a movie, they've read a book, they've talked with someone about this concept. And you just collect all of these things in the back of your mind until at some point your brain spits out, here's an idea, here's a fully formed idea, here's a premise, here's a concept that is related to but different to all of these things. And I will see you in the next episode where we will be talking about filling in these gaps. I will put those links to the generators down in the description box. Also down there will be links to all of the media's social, all the places that you can find me. If you have any questions about anything that I've said, if any of this was confusing, if I rambled too much, if there's anything you would have wanted me to go into more detail about, chances are I did and I just cut it out. Please, in the comments, I am going to record the next couple of episodes before I put this out. But I'll answer questions in the comments and I'll start answering questions from previous videos in the next round. I will also let people know when I'm going to be on Twitch because there will be Twitch streams to do some of this stuff. So thank you everybody. And of course, all of the standard things, please come talk to me on social media. I hope you have a wonderful time of day, whatever time of day it is for you. And I will see you fortnightly for these, probably. And until then,